Hey everyone, my name's Soren Walljasper and I'm a junior graphics editor at National Geographic. I'm actually speaking to you from Minneapolis today. I really wish I could see everyone in person, but it's a beautiful day here in Minneapolis. I think I'm gonna go for my own personal fun run right after this. So contextual labeling and thematic mapping. Contextual labels are kind of background contextual labels that really support the main data that we're trying to show on the map. So they serve as background elements and they act to support. So as cartographers, we're not all necessarily journalists, but I think we are all storytellers, whether we're telling a complex narrative about something or just, a few points on a map. Is still a story that we're trying to tell. So these are the 5 W's of storytelling. I think people mainly associate maps with the where element, but maps can really answer all of these questions here. Today, I'm going to be focusing on the why of it. Contextual labels can really help answer a lot of questions that readers might have about the data set and really put themselves in that situation. So this is a simple map that I made earlier this summer, locating the southernmost tree in the world. What you'll see here is just a simple data set, forest cover in South America. But when I look at this, I have a couple of questions about the data. Why is all the forest at the top of South America? And what's with these kind of weird lines of forest going on the West Coast? A lot of you might know what's creating these trends here, but having these contextual labels on the map really give people a sense of why the data is showing up the way it is and kind of helps readers understand these questions. A lot of you might think this is pretty obvious, We all know that the Amazon basin is in the north part of South America and the Andes run along the West Coast. But if you think about the readers, you really have to put themselves in their shoes. National Geographic, what we really try to do is make sure that readers with no idea about the subject kind of come and can learn something about the map. So when you think about the map as kind of a connection between the map maker and the map reader and an interface in terms of that, really getting something out of the map as a cartographer, you have to put yourselves in the shoes of the user. And that way people can gather the information that they need to. This next example is just a simple choropleth with county level data. It's about heat index in the United States. You can see that there's a lot of different categories here, but this is specifically showing is the number of dangerous days predicted by 2050. So when we were thinking about the labels that we wanted to put on these maps, the first thing that came to my mind was states. And I don't think states hurt this map. They provide, a way for people to see exactly where they are and locate themselves. But if you look at it, the state boundaries really don't correlate with the data at all. And in terms of the story that we're trying to tell, they don't help out. So what I did is I took a step back and I looked at kind of what are the main things that I'm seeing here if I come to this map fresh. You can see large pockets of really hot areas and some cooler areas, a strip coming down here across the western part of the map, and some pockets on the coast there. So the question I asked myself is, what can I do to explain why these phenomena are happening? And was able to do is put some physical labels on this map that gave people a sense of what was going on. You can see the Rocky Mountains influence the temperature in order why there's this, big cooler area, the central lowlands in the middle of the country, even smaller things like the Sacramento Valley and the state plain there in Texas really show themselves on this map. You can see the Appalachians perfectly with that lighter color on the East Coast. So this was the final map we ended up publishing. A lot of other things were on the map, but you can see those contextual labels are still playing a really big part in the storytelling about what's going on. they're a crucial part of the narrative, and they really help people understand why these things are happening and support the data that is the main focus. A lot of the examples I've showed so far with contextual labeling are physical labels, but here you can see this map that Riley Champagne made this summer about how redlined areas correlate with extreme heat here in Minneapolis. He put a lot of contextual labels on this map, but they're neighborhoods. So contextual labels can really be any type of labels, but as you can see, they're not overpowering the map, and they're serving as a background element to help people locate things on the map and place themselves there. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk kind of about the mechanics of how we incorporate these contextual labels into the visual hierarchy of our map. This is a section of a map about lynx migration across the Yukon. So I want to draw everyone's eye on the left side of the screen to the Yukon Plateau label there. Here's kind of a chart of the visual hierarchy on this map. You know, you can see the most prominent thing on the map is the route that we're showing and the symbols, because there wouldn't be any map without it. That's the point. But in kind of in the background, you know, we have the relief. These contextual labels are sitting kind of in between those two things, in the middle of the visual spectrum there. In this particular case, it's about a 55% gray that these contextual labels are actually showing color-wise. So that kind of fits in between the data and the background. So it's really important that these labels kind of strike a balance between things that are the most prominent and our background elements. It's a fine balance, and it depends on the map. So because we're showing, you know, these labels at kind of a lower level, what becomes really important is masking. I'm kind of going to go back and forth. You can see here is the map without any masking on it. Some of these contextual labels are kind of hard to read because they're over some relief, and there's contrast going on. But when we add masking, it makes them a lot easier to read. So masking is a good trick that I've often used to make sure that these labels are not overpowering the map, but are still able to be read. So here they are again, no masking. They're kind of getting abstracted in all these little mountain ranges. When we add masking, it just helps smooth things out. So that's a trick you can use. This is an interesting example. Here's a map about light pollution around Death Valley National Park. A lot of the labels on this map, you know, like Las Vegas or Interstate 15, we would normally be labeling a point or a line feature on a map that we would add to the map. But in this particular example, having a point or a line drawn over top of the data would actually cover it up. So in here, we're really letting the data speak for itself. You know, you can parse out Interstate 15 just by looking at the data and how it goes across California. So instead of covering that up with a line feature, we're just drawing an arrow right to the label there. You can also see that big bright area on the right side of the map is Las Vegas. So again, letting it speak for itself and not covering it up is important there. A lot of the examples I've talked about so far are print mapping and static mapping. But contextual labels are also really important in web mapping, interactive pan and zoom maps like this one. Here's a map that we made last month about the fires in the West. You can see on the Sierra Nevada label, it's reading the exact same way as the labels on all the other maps I've shown. You know, it's got a slight mask on it. It's not overpowering the main thing we want to show on the map, but it's still readable. I think this one is sitting around 50% gray as well. But contextual labeling becomes a little more complicated when the maps are panable and zoomable and you don't have as much control over the single view that people are going to be able to see. In this situation, when we zoom in, the August complex fire here, the visual hierarchy of the map changes a little bit. But if you notice, this contextual label here changes with it. And even when it's going across the main data that we're trying to show, the data is still the focus. The coast range here, you can read it, but it's not the first thing you see. Kind of helps you explain that this fire is on the inland side of the mountains here, and really provides that context that you need to see, but it doesn't take over the map here. So what we have at National Geographic is we actually have contextual labels, both physical and some more human geography labels too, kind of built into the tile set that we use and we have data on. This is just a shot of the tile set plane with no data on it. But as you can see, we've designed the contextual labels to be dynamic across different zoom levels. There's a different color for zoom 4 than it is for zoom 5. That way, it kind of maintains that balance across a couple different, views of the map, and it really makes sure that's staying at the place it needs to be. You can also see that we have a slight mask built in there. So contextual labels are important to have on thematic maps because they help everyone understand what's going on, but it's important that they don't take over the main point of the map. They're there as a supporting role. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Soren. I don't see any questions right now. Aubrey says, thank you, Soren. I love the idea of taking a step back without labels to figure out what contextual labels you need. We'll wait just a little bit here. Okay, Lauren Winkler asks, how do you get the custom label placement on the web map?
You can do that by actually putting the label on a shapefile line curve. It's a little bit of a complicated process, but we can maybe talk about that after it. So you actually put in a line feature, and then you can choose to have that label, at least in the way that we're doing it, which is using Esri software. But yeah.
Awesome. Soren will be able to answer more of your questions in Slack, but we've got to keep things moving. Thank you again, Soren.